Hello, this is my webcam post for week 12. We were asked to choose one of the essays in our readings for this week and expand upon that. The one that I chose is The Fundamental Rights and the Right to Bear Arms by Cynthia A. Stark. In this essay, they argue whether the right to bear arms is a fundamental right or a non-fundamental right. There are three people who present an argument in this essay. The first is Wheeler, who thinks that the right to bear arms is a fundamental right. The second is La Follette, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, who argues that it's not a fundamental right. And then the third would have to be the author, because the author did mention that they are in support of La Follette's interpretation of this, in which that it's not a fundamental right. So Wheeler argues his point that the right to bear arms is a fundamental right by expressing that the right, or by concealing a weapon, or by having the right to conceal a weapon, or the right to bear arms, is to protect your other moral rights. And it's also to protect you from the government, I guess, in cases of tyranny. So by having the right to conceal a weapon, you are basically given the right to protect your moral rights, your other moral rights. La Follette argues that the right to bear arms is a derivative right, where it derives from your moral rights. So your moral rights, like the freedom of expression, is necessary for everyone. Like, moral rights are necessary for every person to, I guess, for everybody in this society, in a democratic society, I guess. But the right to bear arms isn't something that everyone needs. It's not something that everyone desires, and it's just not necessary for every person. And then another example that is given in the text is like consuming alcohol. Not everyone consumes alcohol. Not everyone has to consume alcohol, but it's there for those, I guess, who wish to do so under certain regulations. And I would have to agree with the second argument that it's not a fundamental right, just because the first argument did make sense to me, and I understood where Wheeler was coming from, but I don't think that owning a gun is necessarily the only way to protect, I guess, your moral rights, because I'm pretty sure there are other ways in which you can protect your moral rights without using a gun. And also, it's not always going to work out in your favor. Just because you have a gun doesn't mean that you'll be able to protect your moral rights at all, or at any given time. La Follette, I did like the argument that was presented by his argument that that the right to bear arms is more of a derivative right than a moral right. And I didn't really understand that until they mentioned that not everybody needs it. Not everybody needs a gun, but everybody should have the right to express themselves and stuff like that. So for this essay, I would have to agree with La Follette on that one. And I also think that as for like regulations and stuff, I think regulations should be set. I mean, there are some set, but just, okay, for the example, alcohol. They have regulations set on alcohol. I think that regulations are things that are needed, I guess, in order to just balance out everything. Because if you don't have regulations, then a lot more can go wrong. And then when something happens and there's nothing really to follow up on. If that makes any sense. But yeah, that's my webcam post for this week.